This is Spotlight, a series inspired by Spin's journey of reimagining mobility in cities. Join us as we host conversations with innovators and influencers who are shaking things up.
Hi everyone, my name is Euwyn Poon. I'm the co-founder and president of Spin, the electric scooter company, now a part of the Ford Motor Company. And I'm so excited here today to have Eddie Nam of EN Management. I just realized that EN probably stands for Eddie Nam.
Yeah, not very creative.
Not very creative, but certainly very creative in what you've built in such a short time.
Thank you.
And a very interesting story and another inspiring entrepreneur. And I can't wait to dig in and learn a bit more. But let me kick off and let you kind of tell our audience, what you're working on and what you've built over the last few years.
My name is Eddie. I was born and raised in Atlanta. I went to school in Northeastern where I was a former Division I soccer player. And then I find myself moving to LA, I guess, a little over 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. I got my start at WME. And then
working your way up. I mean, what did you start at WME?
Yeah, so I basically started the equivalent of like a mailroom, right?
The classic mailroom story. Now, do you actually work? Is there a physical mailroom now, or is it just a?
So on the talent side there is, but for music, there's something called Music Central, and it's still very mundane work, but it's more like collecting ticket counts and handling several accounts, and then just dealing with the agents upstairs. They're like, hey, we need to know the progress of how this show is going, so we're just like these worker bunnies downstairs, with very little rights. Just kidding, but you know what I mean.
And when you started, did you have an idea of where you were going, or was it just to get involved at the ground level?
Yeah, I mean, WME is they're striking at the highest level, so I knew that I'd be learning a lot in a very short amount of time. But I always wanted to work in music because around the same time my brother's career started brewing. Yeah. My brother is Eric Nam, so he's a singer-songwriter based in Seoul. That started around 2012. So he started brewing in Korea, but it wasn't big enough to pull me away at that moment when I started at WME. So we kind of made an agreement, hey, why don't you just go over there, learn as much as you can, and then when the time is right, let's work together. Right. What I found was, even when I became an assistant, Eric was constantly putting stuff onto my desk. He was like, dude, can we work on this? My company, they don't speak English. Like, we got to build these contracts. And then at a certain point, we're like, okay, let's do this together. So I left, went independent, and then we just did like a slew of different things.
Yeah. And, how did it feel like just kind of jumping into the void? I mean, did you have a plan, or did it seem a little scary at first, going off and doing your own thing?
If I'm completely honest, it was definitely scary.
Nice.
Right? There's definitely no blueprint, and we can touch on this a little bit later. But, especially as like K-pop was booming, BTS wasn't what it was now. And Eric, I didn't know
what era is this? What year?
This is 2014.
That's
so
early.
End of 2014, right? So you had a slew of like artists such as like Big Bang, like Super Junior and like Girls' Generation, but besides like the occasional Letterman late night thing with no context, there was no like K-pop wave happening, I would say. So even with Eric, who is a solo artist, it's not like a K-pop band. So a little bit more work and development that went into that. But, I knew I wanted to work with Eric. I knew that we had our advantages, me being based in LA, him being in Seoul, also both being educated here in the States. So we have like a very unique lens, I suppose, on how we want to maneuver. And so like I just kind of jumped ship and I was like, dude, let's do this. It was obviously scary, and I had a lot of people saying, are you crazy? You're at WME, you stick it out a couple of years, then you become an agent, blah, blah, blah. But it was very clear to me that I wanted to work with Eric early on.
And were there like big supporters initially? Where did you kind of latch on for inspiration or for guidance?
That's a really good question. When I jumped ship, the first thing I said was, I'm going to go to Korea for as long as I need to just understand how it works out there, right? I think there was a missing bridge in between both cultures, and I felt that me being a Korean American, maybe I could figure out this puzzle. And so I went out to Korea, and all I did was just network, and that meant drinking a lot, going out every day. Yeah. But just really having conversations with people a lot smarter than me, and then figuring it out step by step. I'm still learning, but again, I've been to Korea I think like 50 times since then, so I think I have a pretty good understanding now.
Yeah. Do you identify as more Korean or Korean American? Where do you kind of put yourself?
Definitely more Korean American. I know you're Singapore based. Yeah. I love Singapore. Very international. It's a beautiful city. I think for me, definitely Korean American. Yeah. Just to give you a little background, growing up in Atlanta, I went to a prep school. I think Eric and I were the only Koreans in the entire high school. It was like maybe 500 people. So very slim pickings for people that look like us. But that allowed me to adapt, and I had like a lot of white friends. So just growing up, I was able to assimilate there, but I did lose touch of like what it meant to be Asian and Asian American. So when I went to college and I played soccer, there was just like these random Korean kids like that would come to my games. And there's just like a little supporter section. I was like, who are these Korean people and why are they supporting me? They don't even know me.
Right.
And then they were just like, yo, we just wanted to outreach and like support you. We saw that you're on the roster.
Yeah.
So like, let's be friends. So I was
That's
like,
so cool.
sweet. And then they introduced me to soju and then karaoke, this.
Yeah.
And then I started like understanding those nuances. But it really took me like 18, 19 years to get in touch with that side.
And when you spent a lot of time in Korea, I guess after you dropped out of WME, was that the first extended time that you had to soak in that culture as an adult, or you had been there as a kid but not really after?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was there in 2002 when the World Cup happened.
Yeah.
So that was like a very formative year for me to see it, to see like the World Cup teams and think that I'm going to play professional. And like that was a very inspirational moment for me. And I held that to my chest all the way through college because soccer was so important. But I've never really interacted with actual like actually my cousins and aunts and uncles, and it's just so different, right? I'm just such like a Korean bro / athlete when it came to it. So I had to kind of figure out how to communicate, understand the ecosystem, and then you got all these cultural nuances of speaking to people older than you and things like that.
And when you went back to Korea in a business context to help your brother out, did you end up exporting a lot of the learnings to a global audience? Did you help break him in North America, or is most of his fan base still over in Korea?
Yeah, so I guess that answer is twofold. So when I went over to Korea, I thought I knew a lot. I thought that like the knowledge that I had from like the agency side was like groundbreaking things. And I'm like, hey, this is a big agency. Maybe you should sign your clients here. But what I realized very quickly is that all these Korean labels, they run everything 360. So they have their own in-house booking team as well. So for them, they're just kind of like, we don't really need this, right? And looking through like the booking systems, the past offers that have come in for K-pop artists have been pretty weak. And as you know, it's high production, high production value. So for them to put it together, it was a lot easier. As far as the second part goes, I think, with Eric, I'm very lucky because even though we just had each other in a lot of ways, with that close relationship and being brothers and having that built-in trust, we were very much like, dude, let's just try it. Right? Like, we're not really sure how it's going to work, but let's just try it. So in 2016, we released his first English song. So it was a collaboration with this electronic duo group called Collage. They're under Darkroom, which is the label for Griffin, Billie Eilish right now. They're having like a huge moment. Collage doesn't exist anymore, but at the time, tropical pop and house was like just making a wave right now. So we're like, dude, how about we do a collaboration? You do your stuff in English because you're an American, so your English is going to be fluent. It's going to sound like an American person. Yes, it's going to say Eric Nam, but why don't we put Collage in the front? Yeah. Collage X, Eric Nam, and then have Spotify that started exploding at the time. Right. Look at Collage, look at a major label artist, and then we kind of like ride that coattail. And then, lo and behold, we were like the first, K-pop artists on like New Music Friday, Pop Rising, all these big things. And then we started getting a taste and being like, okay, maybe this is how we navigate. So through that, we did more collaborations. We got Timbaland. We flew to Miami. We did something there. We did something with Gallant. And then recently last week, he did something with Marky Basie. So, we have navigated, but not in a way that's been very much like, I'm K-pop. I'm a big deal in Korea. Pay attention to me. I think Eric's approach has always been, I can write my own music. I'm an actual musician. So why don't we get in the studio? If you like what I'm doing and I like what you're doing, it should work out. Right. And I think that's an important cultural distinction with a lot of Asian acts coming here because they're so big, right? It's kind of like restarting.
I see. Yeah.
And I guess like in the last 3 years, we've really been conscious about building it organically.
Yeah. Would you say more Asian acts are groomed? You mean completely managed and lack sort of the independent creative ability, even, or kind of hampered by management? Actually,
like I think that idea is a little bit outdated. I think back then it used to be the major labels would collect a lot of songs or have their own in-house producers. But when you are seeing a lot of these groups like BTS, they're writing and producing a lot of their own songs, which I commend them for tremendously, because we know that like you know, the way I look at like K-pop right now, there's just like a new group coming out every 6 weeks. It's like, you know, in a lot of ways, it's like the NFL draft, right?
Yeah.
It's like to stay relevant, you've got to be striking at the highest level, producing great songs, putting out great music videos, and touring constantly.
Right.
Because someone younger, faster, better looking is going to
Yeah.
come through the pipeline very quickly. So for those that have stuck around, BTS included, my brother included, Epik High, another group that I managed, who have been around for over 16 years, they have this special sauce, and they're doing something a little bit differently that is obviously contributing to the sustainability of their careers.
And how would you describe sort of EN management as a whole, the vision for it, what you guys are doing now, maybe, and where you are now versus where you want to take it?
Yeah, so I started this like a little over a year and a half ago. So I was like, after that collaboration I told you about.
I see. So prior you were just working with a brother.
Yeah, I was doing like a lot of independent contracting and freelance consulting. I consulted for some major labels in Korea.
Yeah.
I was doing things where I was bringing Hollywood celebrities like Chloe Moretz to Korea on media marketing trips. And the reason why I did that was not only to survive, right?
Yeah.
But also to understand what goes viral in Korea and how those marketing campaigns happen. So from A to Z, seeing that and seeing how you could package a celebrity with like an interview with Eric or like SNL Korea, and like seeing that huge press explosion, that was really important for the way.
So you did domestic work, and you still do domestic, like a Korean. You know, you help get exposure in Korea, and the US. You kind of go back and forth in a cross-border
both
way.
ways. And what I realized was like working with this different talent, like over the years, especially in LA and New York, I'm very open about it. I'm like, yo, like if you need help, if you need vetting, just let me know. Like if I don't know, I can find out immediately if this person is legit or not, or if this deal making like is normal.
Yeah. So, very cool. So back to the vision of EN and
so,
where you want to grow it.
So right now it started with Eric, and then eventually it reached out to Tablo and Epik High.
Cool.
We're the first the Korean acts to ever play Coachella.
Yeah.
And we just wrapped up over like a 50 city tour this year. And we actually signed them to William Morris last year. So we've been doing it very like American style. Yeah. Right. So the vision for my company is just do things the right way, right? Find artists that have international ambition and want to do things, you know, not only in Korea, but just internationally, whether it's Europe, Australia, South America, just outreaching to all markets. But when I say the right way, I just mean like really hitting all of the right benchmarks in growth, right? Like everything I say, anyone I sign, I'm very clear about the steps that you have to take to reach the next level. Especially like if somebody is like really big, has millions of followers, they're going to have like their own preconceived notion of, oh, I'm a big deal. I want to do Staples Center. Right. And I'm like, well, you might want to do Staples Center, but Staples Center doesn't want to do you, right? Like it's just not going to work. So just managing that expectation and aligning with artists that are just like, dude, I want to work hard. I want to build in a market that I'm not familiar with. That's why like the 3 artists I have right now, I feel very lucky to work with them.
You have a very systematic approach to the whole industry. Do you come from engineering? Is that from an engineering background, or
I don't know, maybe like a background of fear of failing.
Okay, yeah.
Just because, you know, while like cutting corners sounds cool and like getting to the finish line a little bit quicker than others is definitely very appealing, I'd say. For me, like I just don't want to let anyone down I work with. Like I never want to take on more than I actually can handle. I realize that the people I work with, this is their livelihoods, right? Like Epik High, they're all married. Some of them have children. I'm just like, if I make a mistake, like that directly affects their pockets. So always doing diligence and making sure that, you know, whatever steps we take, we're doing it in like a smart manner.
That's so cool. And you're also working on something else, Dive.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
So Dive Studios, that came about. So I actually co-founded this with my younger brother.
Okay.
Brian.
Another brother.
Yeah, I have a younger brother as well. So now it's like a family business, right?
I wish I had another brother to work with.
Yeah. So cool. I have the younger brother. So he's probably he's the one ring to rule them all. You know, he's very, very smart. He's actually a former soccer player at Columbia University as well. You know, he was coming more from like a PE background, but what I realized was like, we just kept looking at Korea. He was interning for WeWork, and he was just like, yo, like there's an opportunity here to help creatives because more artists are becoming increasingly more independent, right? The major labels will always be very powerful, but there are like independent artists that are just like, yo, I need affordable studio spaces. I want like a network, like a Soho House type of opportunity to like just kick it with other artists in like a safe space. Because Korea is very small, but it's very spread out.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is like if you and I are in our crew, then only we
Correct.
hang out together, right? So it's very cliquey. And this was an attempt to bring more people together. And one of the ideas that we came about creating this collective was podcasting. And which sounds a little crazy, but what I'm realizing is like podcasting is pretty developed out here in the States. But, you know, with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram becoming increasingly scary for me, especially as an artist manager.
Yeah,
and what
scary
I mean,
in what way? Yeah.
What I mean by that is like Facebook is like disappearing in a lot of ways, right? Twitter, pretty inactive at this point, with the exception of BTS and like Donald Trump going off on something, right? And then Instagram taking away the likes. That just makes me very nervous, especially because I manage a few independent artists and their platform is the most important thing to them, to get in touch with their fans. But if we're like announcing tours, announcing albums and it's getting lost in this noise, that's very scary.
You don't control your distribution channel, right?
Right. And we were doing a lot of research on podcasting, and I realized that podcast listeners, they have a very personal relationship with the podcast host and whoever's speaking, right? Because this isn't like even though it's reaching the masses, it's all going to one person at a time, right? So my brother started his podcast. It's called K-Pop Debak with Eric Nam. It's more like a K-pop weekly update, and then also like an update on him. Okay. You realize that like a lot of the fans, a lot of the listeners, they feel like even closer to him because they're listening on their way to work, on their way back from work, when they're exercising. So it's like Eric Nam, A-list celebrity, K-pop phenom, being like, "Hey, how are you? Hope you're having a good week." You know, like that. You know, like Ryan Seacrest type of thing, where you feel very close to him. So we're doing that. And then Tablo, another one of my clients, he was like, "Dude, I want a podcast." But not like K-pop style, but more like I want to rant about anything I want. And he's like a very funny, very charming guy. So he can like go off on anything. He's a big Marvel fan as well. We were talking about Spider-Man. Remember when that whole like the split with Sony was happening? Sony actually reached out to us, and they're promoting Spider-Man. So Jacob Batalon came onto the show, flew to Korea and did that. So it was cool because my artists have a lot of influence. So we're just kind of making it up as we go. But we realize that the more podcasts we're bringing on, we're also like giving them a platform to get close with their fans. So that's kind of the thinking behind it.
So is there an actual physical space in the works, or is it just a podcast right now in Korea?
There's a 2-floor space in Korea right now.
Amazing.
In Gangnam, and then we just started the office here in LA.
I see. Yeah.
So I help more in like an operational role, and then also like, you know, talent relations, stuff like that. I see it all kind of going hand in hand. I know it seems like a shotgun approach, but for me, I see this like revolving door of like, this is helping my artists. This is helping like the ecosystem. So I kind of see it all.
Speaking of artists, what do you see as the future of like K-pop, and is it sort of evolving now from what you know I would know as K-pop as the sort of the Blackpinks of the world? You know, the first step was exposing that stuff that's been popular to the world, and now I imagine it's going to be continuing to evolve.
Dude, funny story about that. So when I started at WME, like I remember people were very averse to signing like K-pop acts, right? Because I think like guys that look like us wearing makeup, ripping their shirts off, being very pretty, the public was not ready for that, right? Mainstream media was not ready for it. But now, fast forward 5 years later, 5-6 years later, people are like, "Yo, BTS, this is what it is. Like sexiest man alive. This is this." So the Generation Z, the millennials, they're getting more assimilated, and they're okay with seeing these Asian faces on screen. So now that we've gotten over that, remember like G-Dragon? He was just like exploding. He's like very androgynous and like good looking dude. People couldn't get over that hump. Now they're like, okay, this guy's dope. Which I think is which is a huge step. So for K-pop as a whole, the K-pop boy band, girl bands, like I think that's going to continue to soar. Like there's just nothing like it right now. Production value, the rate at which they're dancing and singing constantly, I just don't think there's anything like it. But what I am seeing now is a trickle down effect to solo acts or trios or hip hop trios and hip hop artists. Because it's not just like K-pop, and the meaning of K-pop is Korean popular music, right? But underneath that umbrella is like hip hop. You got people like Jay Park, and you got people like Tablo, you got people like Eric who are pop artists, and then like indie people. So I think it's just as the genre grows and people get used to seeing these people and listening to them, like it's like the Latin boom as well. It's like people are like, oh, there's more than Juanes and more than like Daddy Yankee. There's Bad Bunny and like Ozuna and all these people.
Yeah.
So it's cool. I realize that the way that people are consuming music now and also video content, it's totally different, right? Even like your company, it's like people love scooters now. It's like I see it everywhere.
It popped up like 2 years ago, and
exactly
all over the street now.
Right. So
nuts.
I realize like these younger kids, like you'll see like a 7-8-year-old white kid who like walks into a Walmart and he's like, oh, like mom, that's BTS playing, right? And I'm no longer shocked by that, because I realize these kids, like when we were growing up, we're just bored, right?
Yeah.
Like you follow your mom to the laundromat and you're just like, you just have to be bored, and then you like throw a fit and you're like,
you don't have
crawling out of your chair and you're like,
you don't have
Mom,
Instagram or
exactly.
guess,
and what do you think these kids are looking at? They're looking at the trending tab on YouTube,
TikTok, which I don't understand.
right?
Still.
TikTok, and then it's just all K-pop videos. So they're like, oh, I like these guys. They're dancing really well.
That's so
so
cool.
It's just changing, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a kind of deep question about personal curiosity.
Sure.
You knew about the origins of K-pop and how that evolved. Did that stem from? Where did that come from? I mean, did they adopt some of the early, American bands and sort of make it their own? Did it come from Japan? I'm curious about the early influences, because to me, as someone in the States, it sort of came out of, I just saw a Girls' Generation one day,
Right.
and then sort of appeared.
Right. I don't really know like the history of it as much, but I will say that like I was born in 1990, so my dad would go to Korea and he'd come back with a box of CDs, and I would listen to like these guys named HOT, which are like one of the first K-pop bands, and they're all wearing like, remember when Jinkos were a big thing, and like these Lee pipes, wearing like, huge ski jackets and stuff. I don't know what it was, but to me, I was intrigued. But it was very poppy. I'm sure there's a lot of Western influence in there, and also the hip hop. Right, there was no hip hop in Korea. It was like largely a lot of people like, I don't know, like playing very traditional music.
Right.
So it was picked up across the world. I just realized that like whatever influence they've just taken it to a whole new level.
Yeah.
Right? But I couldn't really pinpoint like the origins. I'd have to type in K-pop history.
Maybe one day we'll go do that. It's kind of interesting. It just kind of popped in my mind.
For sure.
Like in Korean hip hop, you think is still on the rise? It has a lot of potential to continue to grow here in the States and elsewhere.
I think so. I will say that like there are different types of Korean hip hop, right? There are different levels to it, but a lot of like my theories or my observations, it's constantly changing, because like for a while I was like, no K-pop band is going to cross over here unless they're fluent in English, right? To really go to the next level. But then I'm like, BTS's songs are just like in full Korean and they're going #1 on the Billboard chart. So I don't know what to think, right? Even before Despacito, you're just like, I don't know if it'll ever happen, but it's happening. So I realized like the people consuming this music, they're totally changing. They're more open to it. They're more like, I don't understand what's going on, but it feels good.
Yeah.
I'm going to dance. I remember Eric, he did this concert in Mexico City, and there were just thousands of girls like screaming and singing his songs and crying. And I'm his manager, and I'm like, I don't fully get this. Like, what is this like emotional connection you have to them? But again, Despacito happened. I was like, dude, I put my foot in my mouth. That song is a smash.
No,
I don't understand a word in it, but I love it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, amazing to hear your story, by the way. I mean, as I'm listening, there's a lot of parallels to what we've innovated and created on the technology side.
Yeah.
But we saw an opportunity. I grew up as an Asian American, always kind of hungry for the next thing. For me, I found inspiration while I'm actually living in China, saw this kind of product concept and brought it back to the US. There's a lot of cross-border stuff that we do. We literally make a lot of our products in China, obviously. Nice. And so we see it is for interesting parallels that I see, both on the music side, technology front. The world's kind of collapsing, the internet's happening, and there's a lot, when you mash everything up together, a lot of interesting things happen and a lot of interesting opportunities arise for people who are willing to make the effort and can kind of bridge to countries. And so
beautifully said.
And so
I agree with you. So you grew up here in the States?
I grew up in Vancouver.
In Vancouver?
Yeah.
Tablo, my client is from Vancouver
very cool.
as well.
I'm an immigrant and immigrants all the way down. My family was from China, immigrated to Singapore. I moved to Vancouver, and now here in the U.S. So I've seen a lot of different cultures, and I bring a little bit of learning from every step along the way. So I'm the product of many different experiences.
Right. I mean, I think that's important.
And just like you, I was working in corporate and basically had enough and slept on my friend's couch for like 3 months here and decided to jump in. I think that's a very important, interesting thing. A lot of people wonder how did I start a tech company? How did you start a label? And it actually goes back to just do it. You got to obviously surround yourself with good people and have a decent plan. But those first few months are going to be very confusing, scary. But with enough determination, there's enough. It's just about building that puzzle and seeing all those pieces come together. And it generally happens for people who are determined along the way.
Definitely. When I meet people such as yourselves, like I can't help but think that like both of us are very lucky, right? And what I mean by that is like not just from where you are in the company you've built and what you've accomplished, but just the idea and the ability to think this way and say, I'm going to sleep on my friend's couch and I'm going to build something from nothing, right? Like that's a very like American, Canadian type of mentality, I suppose.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you have it, like it's innate in you and you were like born that way, but like I will say I give my parents a lot of credit because growing up when they immigrated here to the States, like my mom is way more Korean. She's like, hey, you got to study your SATs, go to Kumon and like learn all this and become like a math whiz. But my dad was like, hey, we sacrificed to come here, but you should be raised as an American. You should be thinking like, what are your goals and dreams and aspirations? And I was like, Dad, I want to play soccer. And then he's like, well, there aren't many people like Asian people playing soccer in college or professionally. MLS is like nothing here at the moment. But he's like, but the only thing I ask of you is that you try your best. I was like, that's okay, so cool. I'll try my best. But now as I get older, I'm like, a lot of my friends are doctors, attorneys, consultants working in PE. They're all doing great financially, but one common denominator I'm finding is like, they're like, dude, I wish I could be doing more meaningful, like culturally shifting opportunities, right? Like to be in conversations like this. And that's when I realized like, I owe it to my parents that I skipped this step, right? Like I think that my friends that I just mentioned, like they're going to be so financially stable that like for their kids, do you think they're going to force them to play the violin? I don't think so. They're going to be like, dude, like we're good financially, right? We're not working at dry cleaners, restaurants, whatever it is. So why don't you go chase what you want? You wanted to play football. I never got the chance to play football. You should play football. So now I think like as we're all like shifting towards like representation and like more media exposure and stuff like that, I think there's just going to be a bigger talent pool of like talented Asian Americans coming through the pipeline. Right. Because like our Leonardo DiCaprio right now, he may be a Kumon instructor. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? He just didn't get a chance. So I think that's the circle of life that was going to happen. But you and I, we were very fortunate, and you're taking advantage of that opportunity, and I wear that on my sleeve every day. That like I shouldn't be here right now. Like I should probably be like crunching numbers somewhere. Wearing like really really thick glasses. But
I should be a lawyer. I am a lawyer, but I'm just not.
So
being one.
Exactly. So it's always
that's really cool.
It's always fun thinking that way.
So, amazing chat, man. Thanks so much for sharing your story. Any ways that our folks can follow you online? What's the best way to follow what Ian is doing, and the podcast too, right? Yeah.
So, really, you can just find it at my personal account, just across like Instagram is just at ednam10, so EDNAM10, and then you'll find all of my companies underneath that. But it's been. That's basically. I don't really have much to plug except
listen to your brother's podcast.
Is
it in Korean or English?
It's all in English. That's
nice.
why it travels outside of Korea.
Amazing, yeah.
It's been interesting because like you see a lot of the Korean fans, like you worry about alienating them if it's in Korean, but the podcast option to slow it down half speed, they're like, dude, this is great. I'm learning conversational English, so funny. It's a win for both sides. So. That's been really cool, and I would encourage everybody to check out the Tablo podcast. I mean, that's one
is
of
that on Instagram. Oh, wait, where's it?
So like Apple Podcast, Spotify, wherever you find it. If you go to the music category, all three of our podcasts are like in the top 10, floating around with like Joe Budden and stuff. So you should check that out. But that's really what's going on. But,
all right, great stuff, man.
Yeah, dude. Likewise.
Cheers.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you.